Hello, my dear children. So, this video is in continuation with the chapter So, What Are You Anyway? In the last video, we saw that Carol was a young girl of age 11 or 12 who was going to see her grandparents and was sitting on her seat in the plane and relaxing, and then she encountered a white couple who were continuously asking her questions and were talking about her. They were whispering about her, and so she was annoyed and wanted to move to other seat away from them, and she asked the stewardess to change the seat, but she denied. So now let's see what happens next. I'm sorry, but we don't have time to move you now. We are serving a meal. Ask me later if you like. After Carol has eaten and had her tray taken, the man says, "What are you anyway? My wife and I were wondering." Carol blinks, sees the man's clear blue eyes. Blinks means shut and open eyes quickly. And drops her head. Drops her head means look down. "What do you mean?" she says. "You know, what are you? What race?" Carol's mouth drops. Mouth drops means expression of surprise or astonishment. Race? What is that? She doesn't understand, yet she senses that the man is asking a bad question. She wishes her mom and dad were there. They could tell what race meant. "The doll of yours is black," Henry Norton says. "That's a Negro doll." "That's race." "Negro, what's your race?" The question still confuses her. "Put it this way," the man says. "What is your father?" So the stewardess said that they were busy serving meal to the passenger, and so they can't move her at that time, and also told her to ask later for this. Then, after Carol had her meal, the man sitting next to her finally asked her. He cannot control his curiosity, and he finally asked her what was she? What was her race? He wanted to know about her race, and said that he and his wife were wondering about her race. Carol did not understand the man's question. She blinked her eyes, looked at man's eye, and then looked down, saying, "What did he mean? What did he want to know? What was he talking about?" Then the man clearly asked her of what race she was. Carol was surprised to listen the term race, as she never heard of this word, and it was the first time someone asking her about something called race. So, as she didn't understand what the man was trying to ask, she asked him, "What was that question about?" Though she didn't understand the question, she can sense that the man was trying to ask her a bad thing, something very insulting. And she missed her parents and wished her parents to be there at that time so that they can tell her the meaning of the term race and she can reply him. So now the man at that point knew that the young little girl didn't understand his question, and she didn't know about race, but to satisfy his curiosity, he didn't quit and started to explain about what he was talking, and said that the doll she was holding was black in color, and so it was a Negro doll. So Negro was an example of race, and again asked her what was her race. But the little girl was still confused what the man was trying to say. "Put it this way," the man says. "What is your father?" The question baffles her. What is her father? He is her dad. He is her dad, and every Sunday morning he makes pancake for the whole family and lets Carol pours hot syrup on them, and afterwards he tells her stories. Norton leaned towards Carol. Say, you had a coloring book. What color would you make your dad? I never use just one color. Okay, what color would you make his face? Brown. And your mother? Carol imagines a blank page. What would she put in her mother's face? She has to put something in there. She can't leave it blank. I don't know. Sure you do, Mrs. Norton says. How would you color your mother's face? Yellow. Carol sees Mr. and Mrs. Norton look at each other. Is your mother Chinese? Mrs. Norton asked. No. So the man again tried to make Carol understand and asked what was her father. That is, he was asking the race of her father. Carol was getting more and more confused with every question the man asked her. She thought and asked herself, what was her dad? And got the answer that he was her dad only. And every Sunday, he made pancakes for the whole family and told her stories. See how innocent the girl was. Her thoughts showed her innocence that her father was just her dad. While she was thinking, the man again asked her a different question to make her understand. He asked her what would she color her dad in her coloring book. Then again, she showed her innocence by answering that she never used just one color to color his dad. That means she used different color his father's clothes and all. Then the man asked what would she color her father's face. And Carol casually replied brown. That means she thought of it just as a normal color, so she replied brown. The man did not end it here. He kept pestering her and again asked what would she color her mother. Carol imagined a blank page and thought of how would she color her mother. So as her mother was white, she was confused at what color would she put on a white blank sheet to color her mother. But she answered that she didn't know to avoid the question. Then the woman, Mrs. Norton, said that it was obvious for her to know about what color her mother was. So again, to avoid any more questions from the couple, she just replied that she would color her mother in yellow. Listening to this, the couple looked at each other and asked her if her mother was Chinese, to which Carol replied no. So by then, Carol was annoyed, but still she remained calm. Are you sure you'd color her yellow? No. What else might you color her? What else? Carol feels ashamed at her stupidity. A tear races down her cheek. Red, she says finally. Red? You can't color a face red. Is your mother white? Is she like me? Her face, is it the same color as mine? Yes. And your father's brown? Carol nods. When you say brown, do you mean he is a Negro? Yes, of course her father is a Negro. If Mrs. Norton wanted to know all along if her dad was a Negro, why didn't she ask? Then again the couple asked her what else color she would use to color her mother. Carol felt ashamed of her stupid answer and she finally said she would color her mother in red with tears in her eyes. The couple were too much by then. They even saw tears in Carol's eyes, but they still kept on bullying her. And again, the woman said that she could not color a face in red and asked her if her mother was white. Was she like her, the same color as her? Then Carol replied yes, and again they confirmed her father if her father was brown. Carol nodded in yes. The couple then asked very offensive and insulting question that if her father was a Negro. Carol said yes. So you are mixed, Mrs. Norton says. You're a mulatto. Carol's lip quivers. What is a mulatto? Why do they keep asking what she is? She isn't anything. So is that it? You're a mulatto? You know what a mulatto is, don't you? Haven't your parents taught you that word? Alone, she screams at Mrs. Norton. Passengers stare. The stewardess spills a drink. Mrs. Norton sits back hard in her seat, her hands raised, fingers spread. Carol sees people watching. Why do they keep asking me if my dad is Negro? Yes, he's Negro, okay? Okay, Negro, Negro, Negro. Now the couple reached Carol's limit of patience. They crossed all the limits by asking her if she was mixed, and even they called her mulatto. Mulatto is an offensive word that means a person of mixed white and black ancestry. Carol becomes upset and wondered what was a mulatto. Why they kept asking her what she was. She wasn't anything but a young lady. Again, the woman harassed her by asking her if she was a mulatto, if she knew what a mulatto was. The woman knew that the girl was too innocent to know about race or mulatto, but still she kept pestering her. She even asked if her parents taught her about that word. Carol was totally annoyed and frustrated with the couple at that time. Then the stewardess arrived with shoes. She looked at Carol and smiled, which gave her courage, and she burst out in frustration and screamed at Mrs. Norton and asked her to leave her alone in a very loud voice. All the passengers stared at them. Mrs. Norton sat back hard on her seat, and Carol looked at people watching her. But Carol again shouted at them that why did they keep asking if her dad was a Negro, and told them that yes, he was a Negro. Were they okay to listen that her dad was Negro? And she repeated the word Negro several times in frustration. Calm down, Mrs. Norton says, reaching over. Don't touch her, the stewardess says. Who are these people? Someone says from across the aisle. Imagine talking to a child like that, and in 1970s. One woman sitting in front of Carol stands up and turns around. Would you like to come and sit with me, little girl? No, Carol shouts. I don't like all these questions. She keeps asking me how I would color my parents in a coloring book. Why do you keep asking me that? Mrs. Norton pleads with Carol to stop. How would you like it if that happened to you? Carol says. So what are you anyway? What are your parents? How would you color them? Well, I don't care. I don't even care. How would you like to come and sit with me? The stewardess says, smiling. I'll make you a special drink. Have you ever had a Shirley Temple? Carol nods enthusiastically. Already she feels better. Clutching Amy, she passes by the Nortons, who swing their legs to let her out. My God, Carol hears Mrs. Norton tell her husband. Talk about sensitive. Mrs. Norton, looking at Carol's temper and her screaming on them in front of all the passengers, she felt ashamed and she tried to calm her down. But then the stewardess asked Mrs. Norton not to touch her. Then only one of the passengers made a comment on the couple that who were those people talking and harassing a child. Then a woman who was sitting in front of Carol offered Carol to sit with her. But Carol said no. She was again annoyed when the lady called her little girl. She refused to sit with the woman and said that she didn't like all those questions and pointed towards Mrs. Norton and said that she kept asking me how would I color my parents in a coloring book and asked Mrs. Norton why did she keep asking her that. Now Mrs. Norton felt ashamed as Carol was shouting at them in front of all passengers, and she pleaded her to stop and calm down. But Carol was full of anger. She asked her how would she like if they were asked the same things. How would they like if she asked them what are they anyway? What are their parents? What would they color them? And said that she didn't even care that who were they and who were their parents. Then the stewardess asked her if she would like to sit with her, and she offered a special drink named Shirley Temple. Carol felt better then and nodded at the stewardess. She took her doll Amy and went away from the Norton couples. While going, Carol heard Mrs. Norton telling her husband that Carol was very sensitive, who got offended by their normal questions. This showed that the couple was very ignorant and they considered their actions to be very correct. So, I hope you've understood this whole chapter. Prepare who said to whom from this chapter and try to do the exercises given at the back of the chapter. Thank you.